What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you the top 10 most overrated teams heading into the 2025 college football season. Yesterday, if you did not see it, I gave you the top 10 most underrated teams for 2025. If you have not seen that video, be sure to go back and check it out right here on my channel. Now we're doing the opposite. We're going to give you the top 10 most overrated teams for 2025. And look, when I say overrated, I don't think these teams are going to be bad. It's really just necessarily based off of, the hype that they're getting. And then also potentially, saying that they could be a playoff contender. They can win a national championship. Well, some of these teams, I do disagree with that. I don't think they really have a big chance to win a national championship. Some of them obviously could take a step back this year in 2025 as well, because you never know. Some of these teams turn out to be overrated when a lot of teams, we kind of expect them to be really good, but then they turn out to be overrated. And that goes for the case for these 10 teams that I have on this list. But again, I don't feel confident with this list. Again, I'm not really disrespecting any of these teams on here on this list. It's really just based off of the hype that they're getting, and that really puts them here in the top 10 overrated list. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top just like we did yesterday. So starting with number 10, and that's going to be Vanderbilt. The Condors coming in at number 10 out of the SEC. Last year they were 6-7. Vanderbilt definitely proved a lot of people wrong last year, including myself. This team ended up being underrated, and a lot of people didn't really expect it to be. This is a Vanderbilt team that made it to a bowl game. They had a very tough schedule last year, and you look at the history of Vanderbilt, they haven't really been great as a program. Last year they just came out of nowhere and proved a lot of people wrong, and Diego Pavia is a great quarterback. He definitely is solid for them. He's a great runner, and they got some playmakers on this roster. Now, I don't think Vanderbilt is going to be necessarily bad this year. I mean, they absolutely can make it to a bowl game, but it's Vanderbilt. You never know how good they're going to be every single year, and that's kind of the case here for 2025. But I do like all the returning production they have coming back. I mean, they almost return everybody back on the offensive side of the football. I mean, defensively, they lose a couple of key players, but yeah, this Vanderbilt team, they necessarily don't have the talent and everything, if that makes sense. But we saw that last year. They competed against some of the top teams in the SEC. Could they, probably go to another bowl game this year? If they do, then Vanderbilt's probably underrated. But if they don't, if they kind of, take a big step back from where they were a couple years ago, then this team is probably overrated in my opinion. But I'm going to put them here at number 10 for right now. So that means they're not necessarily very overrated. It's really outside that number, that top 5 spot. But they're here at number 10 on this list. Moving on to number 9, that is Syracuse out of the ACC. Syracuse coming off a great year last year, going 10-3, and I did mention Syracuse as being a very underrated team last year, and they turned out to be very underrated. Kyle McCord really fit well into this system for Syracuse, but now he is gone, and with that, with the amount of losses that they've got coming up this year, I think that makes them a little bit overrated. I don't think they're going to be necessarily bad. I think, the schedule definitely has something to do with it. Their schedule very tough this year in 2025 because they have a couple of non-conference opponents on there that I think are going to be really tough for them. I think it's Notre Dame and Tennessee, and they play the Tennessee Volunteers in Atlanta. You'll see Tennessee on here in just a moment, but yeah, number 9, Syracuse. I guess with the losses that they had from last year's team and the loss from Kyle McCord and everything, that's definitely going to make them a little bit overrated. But I think this Syracuse team is trending in the right direction. Last year was just a really good year for them. They were 10-3. Maybe not so much this year. They probably don't get back to that 10-win season, but this team was not really that far behind last year and making it possibly to the ACC championship. Moving on to number 8, we go to the Big 12 now. Colorado. This is a team that gets talked about a lot every year ever since Deion Sanders came here a couple years ago. Colorado last year, they were 9-4. They were definitely a team that I think was very underrated. I mean, obviously they had those returns from Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter. Your two playmakers, and they had a significantly better defense a little bit last year. Their defense at times wasn't really the best, but then, obviously sometimes it turned out to be a really good defense. And, this Colorado team was definitely in that conversation to make it to the Big 12 championship, but they didn't really finish the season that strong from last year. They had to play BYU in the bowl game, which obviously for whatever reason they had to play another Big 12 team. But yeah, the Buffaloes this year, they lose Travis Hunter and Shadir Sanders. and because of that, I feel like Colorado is a little bit overrated this year. A lot of people think this, Colorado team is going to definitely, get back to where they used, definitely like, compared to, last year's season, but I disagree. I think with the amount of losses that they've got and the new players coming in, I mean, I just really don't know how good this Colorado team is going to be. I think they'll be a solid team. They'll definitely be a dark horse team in the Big 12, but they're definitely not a top contender, and they're definitely not a top 25 team, if that makes sense. But yeah, I got Colorado here at number 8 as of right now in this overrated list. Moving on to number 7, we stay in the Big 12, Iowa State. The Cyclones, the team that made it to the Big 12 championship last year. They came up, they really weren't really competitive in that Big 12 championship because Arizona State was a much better team. You look at this Iowa State team this year. I've had them in my top 25 in my way too early rankings. I had them at number 11. But if you go back to my spring football top 25 from this past Friday, I don't really feel confident as much as I used to with Iowa State because you look at this offense, I think it's going to be pretty solid. It's not going to be pretty bad, but who is going to step up in the passing game? Rocco Beck is back at quarterback, but he lost a couple of his top receivers that he went to a lot last year. Those two guys are gone to the NFL, so that's definitely obviously a concern there for the Cyclones. I think this defense will be really good, but this Iowa State team, they're a well-coached team. They're a really good program, and they're not a team that's going to probably be a top contender every year. I mean, last year was really just their year because they had so much experience, and I did talk about Iowa State being an underrated team last year. This year, not so much. I think they're a little bit overrated because of the losses at wide receiver from last year, but I still think this team will be pretty solid. They'll definitely, they'll probably still be a dark horse team and possibly a top 25 team week by week or something, and also some weeks they might not be ranked, but they're at number 7 here on this list. Moving on to number 6, it's North Carolina. This is a team that's getting talked about a lot. North Carolina is a team that's getting talked about being possibly a top 25 team and also maybe a playoff contender. Yeah, Bill Belichick is taking over, but this is definitely the college level. It's not the NFL level. This is a North Carolina team that wasn't really that great last year. They were just about pretty average. They were 6-7. And yeah, North Carolina wasn't really that great last year, and I kind of expected North Carolina to be very underrated. Last year, I think they were a little bit overrated because of that, not that record, but just overall what they did on the field. Yeah, North Carolina wasn't really close to being like an ACC contender last year. This year, I would say they're a little bit overrated because all the hype they're getting with Bill Belichick, I get it. They brought in a ton of additions in the transfer portal, but you realistically don't know how good these guys are going to be. And it kind of goes back to Colorado a couple years ago when Deion Sanders came in. Yeah, they won their first 3 games. The hype was there for them, but when they got into Pac-12 play, that's when the season kind of turned things around and it really got tough for Colorado down the stretch, and they ended up going 4-8. This North Carolina team, they could probably do the same thing, win their first 3 games, and then they get into ACC play. It's probably going to be pretty tough for them, but again, their schedule is not bad in the ACC, and it's not really bad in the non-conference. They got to play TCU, but really, that's about it. North Carolina does have a very easy schedule, and I think that's the reason why they're kind of getting all that hype. But again, I don't want to go too far with North Carolina just yet. I don't really think this is a team that's necessarily a top contender, and I also don't think they're a top 25 team because I didn't really have them in my top 25 in my way too early rankings, and then also my spring football rankings from last week. So yeah, North Carolina at number 6 here on the overrated list, but we go to the top 5 now. This is, these are teams that are definitely overrated in my opinion. Moving on to number 5, and that is Missouri. The Tigers coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons in 2024 and 2023 under Eli Drinkwitz. Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz has done a pretty good job for this Missouri football program in the last couple of years, but you look at this roster this year, if you go back to my top 25 from last Friday for the spring, I did not have Missouri. You can go back and watch that video. I did not have Missouri in my top 25 rankings. I think I had them in my way too early top 25, but that was just an early look at the rosters. But they do lose quite a bit on the offensive side of the football. You lose Brady Cook at quarterback. Last year got injured at times, and Missouri kind of looked like they were a little bit overrated last year, but I think they turned out to be underrated because they finished the season pretty strong, and they ended up winning 10 games because of their schedule, and the schedule definitely definitely does give them a chance to get back to a 10-win season this year. But with the amount of losses on offense, I think this kind of makes this team a little bit overrated in my opinion. Really, it's going to come down to that quarterback position and then also the passing game. Defensively, though, this is a team that has a chance to be a really good defense. Though they probably could be ranked in the top 5 on defense because they do return a decent amount of players on that side of the football. But again, with the amount of losses on offense, I think this team is a little bit overrated. And again, I did not put them in my top 25 in the spring for last Friday. So Missouri, the Tigers here at number 5. Let's go to number 4. We stay in the SEC. And that, of course, is Tennessee. And I know a lot of people probably won't agree with this, but I think this Tennessee team is probably a little bit overrated. At times last year, Tennessee looked a little bit inconsistent on the offensive side of the football. Really, it's their defense that kind of carried this Tennessee team pretty much to the college football playoff. Yeah, they're coming off a playoff appearance last year. Nico Maliava at times looked like he was a little bit solid, and then times he looked a little bit more inconsistent. Well, he's gone, so that definitely kind of changes things for Tennessee in the passing game. You add in Joey Aguilar coming in, the transfer from UCLA. I personally don't know how good he's going to be for this Tennessee team. They lost a couple of really good receivers in Dante Thornton and then also Brew McCoy. Those two guys are gone, and they also lost plenty of guys on the defensive line. But I actually think this defense actually will be pretty good for them. It's really going to come down to that offense, though. I think Josh Heupel would get it really figured out for Tennessee, though. I mean, he's a guy that calls plays and everything. But yeah, Tennessee, a 10-win season for them last year, but with the addition of Nico Maliava gone and everything, I think that makes this team a little bit overrated. And again, I think they were a little bit underrated last year, and then at times they looked a little bit overrated. But Tennessee coming off a playoff appearance last year, but this year with losing Nico Maliava, this team probably is out of that playoff conversation. You never know, but they do have a schedule that sets up pretty well for them. But Tennessee here at number 4 on this list. Moving on to number 3, that is Louisville. Louisville, kind of a team that I didn't really expect to be on this list, but you look at Louisville coming off a 9-4 year last year. That was definitely a little bit of a step back from where they were a couple years ago. I think Louisville was definitely underrated last year. I kind of picked them to go to the ACC championship, I believe, but lose to Florida State. And the Seminoles definitely ended up not being as good as we thought they were going to be. I mean, you look at this Louisville team, I had them in my way too early top 25 in the top 15 or so. And then, go back to the spring football. I put them down at the bottom and everything from 21 through 25. I kind of don't feel confident with this Louisville team as much as I used to, but I still think this will be a top 25 team. But the reason why they're on this list is because of, what I saw online. I saw that Louisville was like an odds, on everything to like get to a national championship this year. I don't want to go too far with Louisville, but that's really too far in my opinion. I don't really see Louisville winning a national championship. It's really just not going to happen. They don't really have like that talented roster and everything. I mean, they added a bunch of additions in the transfer portal, including Miller Moss at quarterback, but I just don't think Louisville is definitely in that conversation to win a national championship. That's just a little too much. Again, I saw them on the odds and everything. They are one of those teams that definitely has a chance to win a national title. That's really too far, and that's why they're kind of in this top 3 because of that. So yeah, they're overrated in my opinion just a little bit. And again, they're going to lose a lot of faces from last year, and this year they have to reload with new faces. I think they're going to be pretty solid. They'll still be a contender in the ACC, but they're a little bit overrated just because of the odds to win a national title. So Louisville here at number 3. Moving on to number 2, we stay in the ACC, and that's Miami. Last year, Miami kind of looked a little bit overrated at times, and then sometimes a little bit underrated. I was predicting Miami to be an underrated team last year. They ended up being underrated, in my opinion. This year, they're a little bit overrated, though. The Hurricanes, they're going to lose a lot of talent from last year, but they do reload with new talent this year in 2025. Really, it's going to come down to Carson Beck in this offense. Carson Beck last year at Georgia, his receivers really let him down. I mean, I just don't know how good he's going to be with this Miami system. We've seen Miami good at times and then bad at times under Mario Cristobal. Yes, they do have talent on both sides of the football, but it's really about what they do on the field. We've seen some inconsistency for Miami in the last, maybe 3 years, to be honest. Ever since Mario Cristobal came here, it's really been up and down for him. I mean, last year was definitely a great year for them. Cam Ward definitely led him to some big wins, but they missed the playoff. They were kind of like one possession away from making the college football playoff. If they didn't lose to Syracuse last year, they probably would have been in the playoff and definitely in the ACC championship. But yeah, Miami, if that inconsistency, continues to grow there for the Hurricanes, then yeah, Miami is definitely a little bit overrated. And again, Carson Beck, it's really about him. If he doesn't really do well for this Miami team, then Miami definitely could be a little bit overrated, and it definitely could be a step back year for the Hurricanes. So that's how they ended up here at number 2 on this list. But we go to number 1, the most overrated team heading into 2025, in my opinion. It's the Ole Miss Rebels out of the SEC. I think Ole Miss is the most overrated team heading into 2025. Basically, amount of losses on both sides of the football, that's pretty much the reason why the Rebels are overrated. You look at last year, they were one big play away from making the college football playoff as well. They finished the season 9-3. They were definitely in that playoff conversation, but they lost to Florida on the road, and that really cost them, a chance for the playoff. I don't know if Ole Miss probably would have made it past the first round. They probably would have had a chance, but probably not if I was going to be predicting it. They probably would have taken SMU spot in that playoff, but yeah, you look at Ole Miss, they were 10-3 last year. This year, a lot of new faces on this roster. You got Austin Simmons taking over at quarterback. I personally don't know how good he's going to be. Jackson Dart was a great quarterback. I saw he went to the New York Giants. I think he fits well into that, team and everything. Yeah, that's a big loss there for Ole Miss. And you look at both sides of the football. I mean, offensively, I think this team is going to be just fine. It's really about the new faces because they lost a lot of really good receivers. And then defensively, they lost some really good players there on the defensive line. I think the secondary will be solid for them, but it's really about the defensive line, and it's also about the quarterback in Austin Simmons. And yeah, a lot of people think this Ole Miss team is going to be probably back and everything in the playoff conversation. I really don't think so. I think this Ole Miss team is a little bit overrated, and I had them in my bottom, I had them at the bottom almost in the top 25 from last Friday. I had them in the top 15, but I haven't really had them close to the top 10 and top 5 per se. So yeah, that's really the reason why Ole Miss, I think, is a little bit overrated this year, is because of, pretty much all the losses that they have coming, from last year. And this year they have a lot of new faces, and a lot of people think they're going to be really good, but I don't think so. I think that really does make them a little bit overrated. I still think this will be a really good team. I mean, Lane Kiffin knows how to get it done on the offense, but it really comes down to these new faces for Ole Miss. And again, I don't think they will be bad, but just because of the losses from last year, and a lot of people saying that Ole Miss is still going to be good, that's pretty much the reason why I think they're the most overrated team for 2025, and that's how the Rebels ended up at number 1. So those are my top 10 most overrated teams heading into 2025. Do you guys agree or disagree with this list? And give me your top 10 overrated teams heading into 2025 as well. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.